tell me why there is sadness in your eyes.
From the outside, their story may seem like the classic rock rags to riches success story. For the most part, this rings true. However, the phenomenal success of Michael Learns to Rock has been far from conventional.
The whole story of this band shows that our music has been able to be the key factor in our success. And we are kind of just only ambassadors for the music. It's really the music that is the thing. So from the very beginning, people have known our songs, but they haven't really known us as persons.
I won't forget the way you're kissing, the feeling so strong, we're lasting for so long. But I'm not the man your heart is missing. That's why
we regard, I think, this band as a filter, as a musical filter. It's like whatever you put into the filter, Michael Learns to Rock, the sound of Michael Learns to Rock comes out in the end. But it's like the soul of Michael Learns to Rock. It has to go through the three of us.
The Danish quartet was founded by the lead singer and songwriter Jascha Richter and drummer Cora Wanscher. Eventually, guitarist Nickel Lentz and the bass player Soren Madsen were brought on board, and Michael Learns to Rock was born.
But together as a band, just like a lot of other bands do, we went to high school, and Jascha and I, we were in the same class there, and I met him, and I went to hear him play. He was a piano player in a bar, and I went there to listen to him. And I was really impressed by his singing and his playing on piano. So I thought, wow, he's a great musician. And then we get to know each other and talked, and he said he was starting to write some songs, and if we should make a pop band. I said, yeah, of course. And then he came up with a demo tape with a lot of songs on it. And that was kind of the beginning for us to say, okay, now we will start a pop group.
Despite English being their second language, they showed enough early promise to be picked up by an American music label in the early 90s.
We were signed to this American record label already back after a few years. And then they worked with us on the first album, and they released the first album, but it took also a few years. And then I think right around the release time of that album, they sent this sample CD around the world to all their collaborators around the world with a lot of 30, 40 songs on it. And our song, The Actor, was on that CD. And somehow that CD ended up in Indonesia with a local record guy from the local record company. And he just heard that song. And it was not number 1 on the CD, it was probably number 30 or something. But he picked the song and said, wow, this is good. And went to the local radio station in Jakarta. And they started playing the song. And people called in and said, hey, play it again, play it again, play it again. And then within months, it was a big hit in Indonesia, and in Malaysia, and Singapore. And so the American record deal really also, by coincidence, made the way for the success in Asia, which is a story about how things really just happen by coincidence sometimes.
I'm not an actor, I'm not a star.
However, success that was soon to come came in a completely different world, one that they didn't even know existed. Michael Learns to Rock went on to become one of the biggest selling Western bands in Asia, outselling some of the biggest names in music, and their albums topping charts simultaneously in different countries across the region.
Actually, it's funny because I remember the very moment that we heard about our success in Asia. We were in this small Danish local radio station somewhere in Denmark, touring on our first promo trip in Denmark. And there came a fax, telefax, and it said, you guys, congratulations, you're number 1 in Indonesia. And we were like, what? We didn't even know we were released in Indonesia. We didn't know anything about the whole story, and we hardly knew where Indonesia was.
And that first promotional trip was certainly an eye-opener for all of them.
25 minutes too late.
As soon as we heard about the success of the Colors album in Asia, we went there for our first promo trip to Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Philippines, and Thailand. And that was kind of the beginning of the whole crazy period.
By now, they were huge stars across Asia. But for these small-town boys from Scandinavia, the high life took a while to adjust to.
I mean, we were 23, 24, 5 years old. And for example, I clearly remember landing in Thailand for the first time ever. And it was just like hundreds of media in the airport, hundreds of fans in the airport. And people just took us to a side and filmed, and there was all these cameras, say hi to people and hi. And then they took us into these great big cars, and there was a police escort taking us, making sure the roads were clear so we could get to this TV studio very fast, because we had to do a TV show. And inside the TV show there was hundreds of screaming girls. I mean, that was quite weird, but we enjoyed every moment of it. Of course, it was fun.
Take care. Take care. Away. Hey.
Not surprisingly, with all this success came temptation. Temptation in the form of thousands of excitable and willing groupies.
We needed to travel under other names for a period. So we picked the names of a very famous Danish group called Gasoline. So we signed into the hotels under their names. There were also 4 guys in that band, because people were calling us 24 hours if they had our names, you know. And there were lots of girls in the hotel, in front of the hotel in the foyers. It was quite crazy in those first years. It was funny, but it was also too much. I mean, it was too much for us to travel in for 4 or 5 weeks in Asia, and all these impressions all the time, and a lot of hard work. We had to travel every day and play concerts, and being confronted with a lot of girls being interested in us as a band was, I think, really tough.
It was in what way?
I think it was hard to. No, I mean, it's really flattering and all, but it was exhausting.